Hi there, my name's Simon from CramTheExam and welcome to week 11, day 5 of your 12-week preparation course to get you ready for your FCE CAE or Matura Advanced exam. Today's Friday, which means that we're going to look at speaking, and this will be the last video that looks at speaking in this course. At the end of the last week, next week, I'll be doing a wrap-up video in the things that you have to think about just before you do the exam. So this will be the last video that looks at speaking, and in that same way this video will be wrapping up a lot of the topics that we've discussed in the previous 10 weeks as I go through what I think you should be concentrating on just before your speaking exam, and to give you some hints and tips and hopefully put you in a better place or allow you to prepare better before you do your speaking exam. Now I'm going to go through a number of different points. So let's begin with the basics, and what I'm going to say is the first point is going to sound a little bit strange, but it's a really important thing. And in the process of preparing for the speaking exam, this is something that you might overlook, or you might not focus on, or you might not realize, and that is you have to understand what this exam is trying to do. This is a speaking exam, and I know that sounds really obvious, so let me try to break that down. In the speaking exam, you're expected to speak. And for some of you, that's not going to be a problem, but for others of you, that is going to be an issue due to confidence, either exam confidence or the fact that you're not very confident that you're speaking, or it might be that naturally you don't speak very clearly, or you're not able to speak to strangers very well, or you're not able to work with other people very well. There's lots of different factors that might affect your ability to speak, but speak you must, because this exam is going to mark you on your ability to communicate in English. And if you're too scared to talk, or if you start mumbling, or you start speaking very quietly, or you don't interact with anyone and so you don't speak as a result of that, all of these things are going to stop you from speaking, and if you're not able to speak, you're not going to get marks. So the first thing that you have to understand, put in your head, is you have to speak. Now, if you've got any problems or issues, or any issues with confidence that will stop you from speaking, then you somehow mentally have got to put all of those things in order before you go into the speaking room. So whatever that might be, whatever that you might choose to do, when you go into the room and do your speaking exam, you'll have to speak. So you might think of this as an opportunity for you to act. You'll be in a room with people that you don't know and that you'll probably never see again. You might be working with someone, the person who's also doing the exam, someone that you'll never ever see again. So this is a perfect environment for you to act. Pretend to be a persona, a character that you wouldn't normally otherwise be if you're not very good at speaking in public places, and act. Be someone, or be a role, be a different persona, a braver persona. Now, this is actually advice that I gave to someone which was very successful in a slightly different way. And I went through this anecdote in one of my speaking videos a few weeks ago, where this girl in particular was having difficulty with pronunciation. She was speaking far too quickly, communicating everything at once, and the examiners, for whatever reason, didn't like this. So I asked her to act. I asked her to act and be very sad, be very professional, a professional sad person who speaks English. But the effect was that she passed her exam. This was the style of pronunciation that the examiners were looking for: slow, measured English, not fast, excited English where everything is put together. So acting or approaching the role and being a different persona in the room might be something that you would think about. The second thing to think about is that this isn't just speaking. There is a structure to this exam, as there is for every other part of your exam, whether it's the FCE CAE or Matura Advanced. And you've got to know what that structure is, and you've got to know what parts of that structure are going to score you the best marks. So, for example, because if you had a look at the videos that I did a couple of weeks ago for the FCE and the CAE marking schemes, the last 2 weeks, then you'll know what areas of grammar will score you higher marks than otherwise. So, or it was we were talking about cohesive devices, I think they were called, or linking or linkers. So if you use simple linkers like and, but, so, yet, then you're not going to score the same amount of marks as if you used advanced transitions like furthermore, moreover, or something along those lines. Those slightly more what we might call advanced linkers. So the structure tells you to look for that. The structure, as part of that marking, that the examiner's sheet, looks for a lack of hesitation. So working on your fluency and not hesitating would be something that you could work on, and so on. We'll have a look at the examiner's sheets again in a few moments' time. But the idea is that there is a structure to this exam. And if you prepare for the exam, bearing in mind that there's a structure and you've got to work towards the bits of the structure that are going to score you the highest marks, then you're going to get higher marks. Now, it's all very well and good knowing the theory that there is, I have to speak, so I'm going to have to do something about that. And there's a structure, and I need to know the structure. But this is really nothing without practicing. And in the first few videos that I did on the speaking exam, I said many times, record yourself practicing. So set up your mobile phone in front of you, and as you're practicing the questions, whether it's part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, doesn't make a difference, record yourself, watch yourself back, and challenge your own challenge your own speaking. Ask yourself, what could I have done better? What didn't work? What happened? And you'll find very often that even when you're speaking to a mobile phone, you actually hesitate a little bit. You're thinking and talking at the same time. You know that you're recording yourself, which might be a little bit strange, a little bit unusual, so there might be some pressure there. You're thinking, I've not done this before, so this is all a bit weird. And so as you're trying to answer the question, you might find yourself hesitating. So doing this will actually help you to overcome the hesitation that might happen in the exam. Not to mention the fact that you'll listen to yourself, and you'll listen to yourself say things which are incorrect, and you'll listen to yourself say things which perhaps don't make any sense. Because if you have to speak for a minute or 2 minutes, and I'll come to that in a second, then you want to talk and talk and talk and talk. It's inevitable, if you haven't practiced, if you're not on top of what it is that you're trying to say, you're not in control, you're going to talk about things which are not relevant. And in watching yourself back, you can identify those that language which is not relevant, and ask yourself, what am I trying to say here? Is it possible that I could rephrase this in a different way? Or did I really not need to say this? Did I need to pay more attention to the question? And you might ask yourself when you're watching yourself back, did I answer the question? You've got to answer all of the parts of the question. So that's an important part of practicing. The other important part of practicing is speaking for a minute or 2 minutes. Now, I've covered this a lot, particularly in around about weeks 6 to 8 or 6 to 9, something around that region, when we were analysing the videos of people doing speaking exams, of how they were not speaking for very long at all. But you in the exam have to speak for a minimum of a minute. So set up your phone, record yourself next to the phone or on the computer screen behind the phone, set up a stopwatch, hit start and see the time ticking down, and just go and try to speak for that time. Speak and speak and speak and speak, and it's inevitable that in that time you're going to make mistakes, as I said before, and you're going to talk about things which are not important, as I said before. And that's the process of watching what you've recorded, watching yourself, editing yourself, and doing it again. So many people think that getting ready for the speaking exam is rather like a random event. It's not. It's something that you can practice as much as you can practice for any other part of the exam. Excuse me. You need to practice this, and the practice needs to start as far back as possible. So if you've only got 1 week to the exam and you haven't practiced, there's still time to practice, but ideally you want to practice for at least one month, 2 months in a structured way, recording yourself, watching yourself back, editing, and so on. Now, you've got to speak for a minute or 2 minutes. What about? Well, first of all, find lots of speaking exam questions on the internet. That's point number one. But in terms of general practice, have a look at your course books. In your course books, the course books will be divided down into a number of units, whether it's 10 units, 12 units, 14 units, or even more. Each unit will have a topic. And so there will be exercises in each unit to discuss that topic, whether it's health, whether it's holidays, whether it's pollution, whether it's the environment, technology, whether it's nature, whether it's lots of different things. Have a look at those questions in the course book and do those questions. There'll be lots of discussion questions. Do those discussion questions. Talk about those discussion questions whilst recording yourself, and with a stop clock on, so you're putting pressure on yourself. One way to develop the ability to speak for a minute, and this is something that I've covered in my videos, is to get into the habit of brainstorming topics very quickly. So you're brainstorming topics for about 10-15 seconds. In part 3, you've got 15 seconds to brainstorm or to think. And in 10-15 seconds, you should be able to come up with 2 or 3 ideas. Okay, so you've brainstormed something, you've got a main topic, whether it's environment, and you've come up with 2 or 3 ideas which are connected to the environment. Now, with every single idea, there's going to be a pro and a con. So straight away from one topic, you've got 6 different things to talk about. You've got 3 topics, each topic has got a pro and a con. Suddenly we've got 6 things to talk about. And it's difficult to speak about 6 things and that to happen in less than a minute. Even if you're talking 1 sentence on each thing and you're linking it together, then that's around about 40 seconds, 50 seconds. So it's, with practice, quite easy to speak for 45 seconds to a minute, because you brainstorm an issue, you come up with 3 or 4 ideas. With every single idea there's a discussion, a pro and a con, and that then fits into structure, because the structure asks you to look for cohesive devices, and cohesive devices would be comparing and contrasting using those explicit linkers. On the other hand, whereas it could be this, and so on, so on. So there's plenty of linkers which lend themselves to discussion, and that discussion is something that you can create because you're brainstorming, and everything that you brainstorm, you've got a pro and a con. So everything can link in together. As you can see, that there's not a random event. That this speaking exam, it means that you have to speak for a certain period of time, but because you can brainstorm, you can come up with a number of different ideas. With ideas, you have discussion because you look at the pros and cons, which means that you're speaking for a minute. So you can see how the practice all comes together again. And finally, my final note on this would be in terms of the things that you, or 2 more things, in terms of the things that you have to practice or have to know before you do the speaking exam, is the examiner's notes. So if you're doing the FCE video, check out my video for week 9. If you're doing the CAE video, check out the video from last week, week 10. Have a look at what the examiners are looking for. This goes back into structure. And then once you know what the examiners are looking for, then put that into your practice. And it could be the case that in front of you, you've got a mobile phone which is recording you. Behind the mobile phone, you've got a computer screen which has got a stop clock on. Go to YouTube, 1 minute stop clock, you're going to find plenty of examples. And then you've got notes next to your mobile phone about linkers, for example, or brainstorm topics. So you can practice all of this at home. Then you've got the minute you do you practice your speaking, you then look at yourself and you ask yourself, have I answered the question? Have I answered the question in terms, and have I managed to get what I think is band 5 answers for all of the elements the examiners are looking at? So that's how you can practice at home. Another way to practice is rather more passive practicing through observation, is to have a look at the resources online on YouTube for people doing the speaking exam, and you'll find that there are plenty of videos of people doing the speaking exam for the FCE and CAE, and mark them against everything that we've discussed. So, are they speaking for a minute? Are they answering the question? Are they using the things the examiners are looking for? Is there hesitation? Is there interaction? Are they speaking well? Are they mumbling? Are their heads looking at the table instead of looking at the examiner? And so on, so on. So all of these things come together and if you practice them over a period of time, you will yourself get better and better and better and better. And my final point, and I mentioned this I think at probably my first video, is your approach, your personality as you go into the room. And I think people sometimes laugh at me when I say this, but I think it's a really, really important point. You're going to be doing a speaking exam. There are lots of people doing the speaking exam. The examiners are going to be stuck in that room for an awful long time, and they pretty much make a good judgment of your ability to speak as you come in the room and as they go through those first exchanges. So if you've got a positive attitude, if you speak brightly, if you say good morning as you go into the room, if you act confidently, this goes back to this process of acting, be that persona, that brave, that personable, that confident persona, sit down, engage in part 1 of the exam in a full way. Then the examiner starts to think, wow, okay, this is good. This is memorable. This is someone who looks as if they can do something here. And they react to you positively, and they react to you in a way that might give you the benefit of the doubt. And your attitude has a great bearing, or is really, really important for the examiner who is talking to you, because the examiner who's talking to you has got that mark sheet. If you look back at the previous 2 videos, which I think is for general or global achievement, I think it is called, and that basically means the overall picture of how the person is able to communicate in English in response to the questions. So a positive personality, a smile on your face, etc., etc., helps towards that global achievement. If anything, it wakes the examiner up from the hours and hours and hours that they have to do this, and it might show you in a more positive light. And there's nothing to lose by going in with a big smile on your face and saying good morning. And there we go. I hope that my videos on the speaking exam have been helpful. If you've got any questions at all about the speaking exam, any worries that you might have, anything at all that I might be able to help you with in the form of a written answer, then leave it in the comments below and I will get back to you. Enjoy your weekends. You've still got a few weeks to practice before your exams, if you're doing your exams in May or in June. So if you haven't practiced your speaking exam, this is a good time to start practicing. And if you're practicing already, well done, please continue. And I'll see you again on Monday with another writing video. See you then.